So, Jenn, thanks for joining us on the Lead, Learn, Grow podcast.
I am so excited for being here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of questions for you. You've got quite the background. But I want to start, I want you to imagine the 18-year-old Jenn. You're back in high school. Maybe you're starting your senior year, finishing your senior year. And if I would have moseyed up to you and said, "Hey, Jenn, what do you want to be when you grow up?" What do you think you would have said when you were 18?
Oh, gee, a flight attendant. I would have said a
Yeah.
flight attendant because I wanted to travel. And I'm like, that's going to be the easiest way to travel.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. Um, so take me back to, and I said this during the introduction for the episode, but you had this life-changing moment with your car accident, and I believe it was in 2018 as you write about it. What was your life like before the accident?
Yeah. So my life before the accident was a good life. I own a financial service company. So I had hired myself out of a job so that I could be a stay-at-home mom because that was my goal. Um, I became a stay-at-home mom. I don't think I realized that maybe it wasn't the best alignment for my personality. I felt a little guilty about that. I just was going through the motions and I decided, you know what? My kids, I'm going to launch them once they all get to college. Then I'll start doing things that ignite my soul and get me excited again. But right now, like I'm lucky. Like stop complaining. Good is good. And then the car accident happened and that changed everything. Like that was a line in the sand.
And what changed? Like, so fundamentally, it feels like you were one of these folks that, like as you just said, line in the sand, things are different on the back end. So what was it about that caused you to change, and what was the change?
Yeah, I mean, my accident was an extreme accident. The car was going end over end and started twisting sideways. The police called a few weeks after the accident to let me know they rebuilt it in a million different scenarios, not a million, but a lot of different scenarios, and could not build a scenario where I lived. Like, they're like, we have not been able to yet recreate a situation where you lived, let alone walked away. And I just remember that accident being like, oh my goodness. I do not get to choose when I die, but I
Hmm.
sure get to choose how I live. And had that been my like last day on this earth, there are so many things I wanted to see or experience or do or try or become that it would have been devastating. Like my life resume would have been cut short. And all of a sudden I realized like we don't have forever. We
Hmm.
really don't. We sometimes like get into the mundane monotony of the everyday and we forget like this is going to end and every day is magical. And that accident just reminded me like there's stuff I want to do. I started making a bucket list. I think it's going to take me a couple lifetimes to complete all the things, but it really opened me up to no, I'm not waiting to launch my kids into college. Like I'm going to be a mom and do things that get me excited so that I'm making the most of every single day. So if I do happen to die prematurely, I've done more of the things I want to do.
Hmm. So why do you think, I'm curious because sometimes, you do read about these people who have these experiences, and it sounds like you had an experience where like everything after that changed, everything was different. Um, but sometimes people have the same experience and nothing changes, and sometimes maybe it even gets worse because it becomes woe is me, and there's a victimization maybe, and oh, I had bad luck. Like, what is it about people, or what is it about you? Do you think that the same thing could happen to different people? One becomes a life changing event for the positive, and the other, it's almost like nothing changes.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk from my experience. I don't know if I can answer for others. For me, I had that accident. I remember coming home from the hospital, walking into my house. I see all my kids. right? Nothing's changed for them. Everything has changed for me. They had no clue how close they were to being orphaned. And then I remember two of them fighting. And before, I'd be that mom that would intervene and be like, oh, come on, be nice. Like, let's figure this out. And all of a sudden I sat there and watched the two of them fight and was so appreciative of them having different opinions and them caring about the other one so much that they wanted the other one to think the same way they did. And all of a sudden there was so much more to be appreciative of versus like, this is the right way, that's the wrong way. And then fast forward a couple weeks after I get home from the hospital, I get a phone call from a friend's husband, and my girlfriend died. My girlfriend was out on a trail running, on a trail that I could push a stroller on. It was wet out. She slipped, hit her head on a rock, and never came home.
Mm.
And so the sequence of events for me, right? Like I had this horrific car crash that if you saw the car, you're like, how was there even a human in it still? And then you have her who's doing something healthy that we're encouraged to do, and she doesn't get to come home. I'm like, I can spend my whole life trying to make sense of that. I'm never going to get an understanding there. So the only thing I do have control over is how I live my life. And man, it is a gift. Like watching children or watching the sunset or watching like plants grow or like all these little things that you just you take for granted because they're so there that you don't realize them. And then also when you just slow down enough and you become present, like it's a pretty magical thing to be is alive and experiencing and doing life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think about sort of the old Stoic philosophy of like memento mori, like you could leave this earth today, and how on one hand it sounds very morbid and sort of a creepy way to think, but then on the other hand it reminds you that you know what, you really could.
Yeah,
And
it's so freeing. It's like
yeah,
really freeing if you look at it that way. You're like, okay, so you think I'm an idiot because I failed at whatever. At least I tried.
yeah.
At least I got to know where my edges were, my experience was, or who I like more about me. Like this whole thing of life, we get to learn about ourselves in different environments.
Yeah. So you, so you, I had to read this twice when I was getting ready for this. So you have climbed the world's 7 second summits.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talk about that. So why the second summits and why seven and why climb anything at all? Like what's driving that?
Right. Okay. So quick version of this is the car accident, right? It opened me up to life and I started making this list of things I wanted to do. And on that list was a climb a mountain. And my 40th birthday was coming up in 2020. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to climb a mountain for my 40th birthday and knock off this next decade with this significance. And so I wasn't really into mountaineering. I called a couple friends that were. I live in Park City, Utah, so we have lots of mountain people out here. And more than one person said I should climb this mountain called Ama de Blanc. It's located in Nepal. It's the Paramount Pictures logo. It means mother's necklace. I'm like, okay, perfect. Like it hits a couple things on my bucket list. See the Himalayas, climb a big mountain, da 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 da. I sign up for Ama de Blanc. COVID happens. I become a homeschool teacher. My goal gets set on the side. My son is complaining about his math homework. I tell him we do hard things. We've got this. He looks at me. He goes, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? I said, Ama de Blanc, not I'm a Dumb Blonde, but thank you. We'll look at Everest. So then I looked at Everest. I called the coach. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm climbing Everest. If he thinks Everest is the biggest thing in the world, I'll do Everest to prove to him that we can do whatever Everest is. I hire a coach to get me ready. The coach gives me a book. In the front of the book, a lady got a Guinness World Record for doing something in the Alps. I was kind of half joking with my coach saying, I could have done that. Like I'm the queen of suffering. Are you kidding me? I have 7 children right now and none of them like me. This homeschool thing's going terrible. And all I want to do is be appreciated for 5 seconds. So find me a record. And he laughed and he's like, I'll think of something. Don't worry. And I let it go. And then a few weeks later, he calls back like all excited. Jenn, I have the perfect record for you. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you know the record you want. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, I think you should climb the 7 second summits. And like you, I had no clue what the 7-second summits are. I'm like, what? He's okay, let me explain. Let me explain. He's like, they're the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. They have not been done by a female before. They've only been done by 1 male. They're harder than the first 7. So you know people that have done the first 7 summits. I know like 2 people. He goes, so it's respected in the mountaineering community. And you said, like, you want to make your life count. You want to empower others and show them what's possible. And I think this is it. 7 continents, 7 mountains, 7 kids. Sounds like a jackpot. So I said, all right, let's look into it. And I looked into it with the kids, studied a little bit more, and said, yes, like, let's try it. I mean, if I fail, it hasn't been done before anyways, and let's see what happens. So that adventure began.
And remind me, you said on your bucket list, you said climb a mountain, like you'd never climbed a mountain before.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd done the Grand Teton in Jackson Hole. So living in Park City, friends took me there. That's when I knew I loved it. And I was like, okay, when the kids are older and I have more time, I'll get into mountaineering more. This is amazing. And then when I was looking at my bucket list, I'm like, okay, well, the easiest time to climb a mountain is when you're younger versus older because you're healthier and you're more shape and da 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 da. And so then that turned into this huge mountaineering pursuit. And yeah, it just finished in June of this year.
Oh, wow. So you
Yeah.
finished number 7.
Yes. Yes.
So you're not talking about hiking, are you? You're talking about like, is this like climbing, like ropes and that kind of thing?
Your ropes. Yep. I mean, some of them are easier than others, but I mean, the big one that people typically know is K2.
Mhm.
So K2 is the second highest point in the world, next to Everest. So I used Everest as training ground for K2 because Everest is so much easier than K2. And then in Africa, Mount Kenya is a 20 pitch rock climb. So you're in a harness and rock climbing shoes and climbing versus Kilimanjaro is a hike, which is the highest point in Africa. So yeah, I mean, it was a mix of everything. I had a lot of skills to acquire and learn.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel really bad because last week, I hiked a mountain in New Hampshire. My wife is going to listen to this episode and she's going to be rolling, laughing right now because we did a hike in New Hampshire that was maybe, I don't know, 5,200 feet or something and about killed us both. So,
Oh, yes. Hey, you get trained, right? You're either
yeah,
trained or you're untrained for these things.
I guess, but yeah, that's something. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank
Now
you.
you've got a book that's coming out, and I really wanted to pick your brain on. So your book is called Quit Proof: 7 Strategies to Build Resilience and Achieve Your Life Goals, right?
Yes, yes.
I'd love to pick your brain on what are some of the strategies? Because when you think about, the folks that are listening to this, I mean, business owners and salespeople and everybody needs a little dose of resilience in their
Yes.
life these days. And so what are some of the strategies that you can offer that might be helpful to the listeners?
Yeah. So I'll do this one because it brings in some stories from my sales days. Commit to the commitment. Okay. When you climb mountains, there's certain points where you're committed. Like you can't go backwards from where you are. So once you take step, you have to keep going all the way to the top, or you have different points that you can exit, but not the point that you're at. When I graduated from college, my first job out of college was in financial services. I'll never forget this. I showed up for my first day of the work. I'm like, hi, I'm Jen. I'm the new financial advisor. They gave me a phone and a telephone book. And they're like, here you go. That's your cubicle over there. Or that's your spot. I'm like, oh, no, I'm the financial advisor. They're like, yeah, sweetheart, you are. And you're going to build your book of business through this phone book. So go get on the phone and you'll learn by showing up. Right. And I was like, the first 3 weeks of this job, I left every day sobbing my eyes out. I had never heard the word no so many times in my life. I almost quit. But I didn't quit because I graduated from college at a young age. And when I was graduating early, my parents said, you need to stay at this job for a year, no matter what.
Mm.
And my parents were the kind of people that I was scared of. I wish my children were scared of me. They are not, but I was scared of my parents. So I like was 3 weeks in, I literally called my college to see if I could somehow get back into school and do one more year. And they're like, we have you graduated, like you're done. I'm like, okay. So I am stuck doing this phone book silly job for the next year because I committed to the commitment. It was no longer like, how do I get out of this thing? Like that had been decided. Now it was, how do I like survive it? How do I make it fun? How do I somehow find joy in this journey? Because otherwise, these next 52 weeks of my life are going to be horrendous.
Hmm.
And I really realized there's so much power in that commit to the commitment because now all of a sudden I'm changing this phone thing into a game. I'm gamifying it. I'm running numbers. If I get 97 no's, that means I'm going to get 3 yeses. If I get 3 yeses, I'm going to get 1 account. If I get 1 account, I'm going to make $3,000, right? Like I had everything dialed into numbers. So then it became a numbers game and not emotionally against myself. I would bring a mirror into work so that you could smile and dial because you can hear a smile on the phone.
Hmm.
I bought those like ice cream poppers, but back in the day they had them as guns. You can't buy them as guns anymore. I actually tried this for my son because he was struggling with his math homework. But I'm like, anytime somebody would hang up the phone with me, I would shoot that little popper gun and then put the sponge ball back on top. So it's like I kind of got the last poke, even though they think they got the last poke. Um, and you figure out, how do you enjoy the journey? And so if you're building a business or you're building a sales career, you're doing whatever, give yourself something that you're committing to. And so now you're not spending energy negotiating whether that's the thing or not. Now all your energy gets to be used to, how do I make this fun? How do I make this enjoyable? What's another way to look at this so that I don't go home every day crying?
Yeah, that's really good. And did you find, I'm curious, did you find that like did it get better over time? Like did you hate it less as you got emotionally disengaged from the process, took your emotions out of it? Like what changed in the year of doing something hard, if anything?
Yeah. So this company was a master of personalities like mine. Like I drank the Kool-Aid, like hook, line, and sinker, right? So
Hmm.
they had all of our names and numbers on a board.
Hmm.
So you put a hyper competitive human like me in an environment like that, and I am going to work my way to the top, hell or high water,
Hmm.
right? And so for me, it was less about, okay, I can do this thing because I want to be on that spot on the board. Like, who cares what spot on the board you are? But I cared, like I
Right,
did so wholeheartedly.
right.
And so then who you're like another principle from the book, but it also applies to in this circumstance, like to climb big mountains, you need big teams. Okay. If I phoned by myself in a room, I would get lonely. I'd have to go to the bathroom. I'd like, maybe I should brush my teeth again. I don't know. Like all the silly things you do that delay what you're supposed to be doing. You
Mhm.
put an accountability partner in there, or you put like the other people in there, and it's like, okay, who can make the next 5 dials the fastest, or who can do whatever. Like all of a sudden it becomes fun and you play off of each other's energy, and it makes whatever you're doing that much easier, that much faster. And so really making sure that you're building a community around you that supports you and what you're doing is going to make it a lot easier to get to the end game.
Yeah, that's so true in sales. I mean, it really is. It's not, sometimes when you say sales is just a game, I mean, it's not. It's people and you're helping people solve problems and all that. But you really do have to take your emotions out of it. Like if you live and die on every yes and every no,
Yeah.
it's a really tough life. And you seem to have, like, I'm thinking about you climbing these peaks and just being a beginner, and like you have this relationship with suffering
Yes, yes.
that is perhaps unique. Like how do you look at suffering? How do you look at struggles? And like, how do you, I mean, do you think you're just hardwired to get through hard things, or have you developed strategies that help you get through hard things?
I think our lives set us up to be better prepared to handle hard things or not. Um, I also think you keep stories on speed dial of when the hard thing turned to a good thing, right? I
Mm,
mean, like I didn't love the calling at all in financial services. But when I had a couple come in and I helped them figure out how to send their kid to college and the excitement that they had and the opportunity that they provided their entire family, give me a phone all day long. Are you
yeah,
kidding me? If that's the end result, that this person gets that benefit and they figure out their puzzle and everybody wins, like I'll suffer for that. That's amazing.
yeah.
I suffered having children. My body wouldn't do it naturally for some silly reason, and I had to have assistance, and it took years and months and all the things that went wrong, and then I finally have that one child. I would do it all again for 10 times as long if I knew the end result was gonna get me that one kid that I had. So I think when you have these experiences that you keep in your brain of like, "This is hard." Yeah, but I've done hard things before and look what they produced or look what they made possible. This hard is just a different hard, and I have to trust that it's gonna pay off, and I know it's gonna pay off because it's paid off other ways in my life before.
Mm. Yeah, so that's good. That's good. So when I think about when I looked at your website,
Yeah,
and you're also, I noticed that you've got the like challenges that people can sign up, and this whole 7 second summits, like that's a challenge. Like, okay, I laugh. My challenges pale in comparison, but like right now, I'm in the process of um, 60 hikes. So my daughter got me a book, and it's like 60 hikes within 60 miles of Richmond, Virginia, where I live.
yeah,
And so when I got the book, immediately it's like, you know what? I'm doing them all. I'm going to do all the hikes. And so I think, and my wife's done them with me, and I think we're on number 53. I think we've done 53 of them. And so I get like that check the box and, let's cross them off and all that. But why do you think these, I don't know if we would call them like immersions or these short-term, hyper-focused, let's almost like Ben Franklin, let's focus on this, attribute for a day or for a week, and then let's go to the next one. Like, can you talk through that? Like, why do you think that's effective, and what is it that draws you to that way of growth and development?
yeah. No, I love it. Like I'm a challenge junkie, as you can tell on the website. I build different challenges out to hold myself accountable. I get bored easy. And I think life gets a little mundane and I don't have the endurance to keep the same excitement all the time. And these are just pursuits or challenges that I built to hold myself accountable. So my challenge that's coming up next is a parenting connection challenge.
Mhm.
So for 40 days, I'm doing different activities. They're like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I mean, they're not even that long of activities, but the intention behind them is to connect with my kids. And so I can do that very well over 40 days. We build our relationship stronger. I figure out what works, what doesn't. And then, over time, it kind of maybe falls away or it's not as intentional or whatever else like that. And so then I can bring it back at any point to get refocused and centered. Otherwise, I focus on other things, right? So I built one around intentions and self-care. I think it's my upbringing. The guy grew up in the era where we self-sacrificed and women put themselves second. I definitely see that changing over time. I know I'm a better human when I actually take care of myself and then take care of others, but it's not my hard wiring. So it's easier for me to like fall back into that pattern of, give, 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 give and not refill my bucket. So that intention challenge helps me just center again and be like, okay, my life's important. I need to do me so that I can help you do you. So I love challenges, right? Like I've done a million of them and I love different things about them. And I love the community that it collects and the support that you give each other and the things that you learn from one another. And then after the challenge, you kind of get a chance to see what worked, what didn't, maybe integrate some of those things more long term. And then, you revisit it again at some point. Normally, I try every 12 months. And then that allows me to be like, oh, maybe something new stuck out, or maybe something changes a little bit, or whatever. It's just been a fun way for me to progress as a human.
It's a little bit like the telephone book and the phone thing, right? And the
Yes.
people around you and the name on the board and it's that same kind of vibe. So
Yeah.
no, that's cool. And I'll at the end I'll give you a chance to tell. I think folks will be interested in seeing that. That was interesting the way you've got that laid out. A couple more questions. So what what are some of the things that you do intentionally around self-care? Because you've mentioned you've got 7 children. It sounds like they're all of school age, right?
Yep.
Are you still teaching homeschool?
Thank goodness we're back in school here.
Okay,
COVID's
so
done. Yeah,
you're
yeah,
out
yeah.
of that.
I'm
Okay,
out of that.
so I mean I can't imagine seven children. The pursuits that you're on. You just finished the climbing challenge, and I'm sure there's a lot of training and stuff that goes along with that. And then, by the way, you've got a book coming out. Like it seems like you're doing a lot, but I mean, really, how do you keep from just being like really, really busy and sort of disconnected from who you really are? And how do you keep yourself grounded and in a good space? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, no, I have spots in my calendar that are downtime because I think it's really easy for us to get into a rhythm and a routine and have it be this high speed thing. And then all of a sudden, when that slows down, you want to keep the thing going. So you add something new and you add something new. Um, I was that person, like 1,000%. And so it's an exercise for me. I have to look at my calendar over a quarterly basis and just be, okay, am I building downtime in to recharge, to absorb all the training and all the things that I'm taking on and actually enjoy the fruits of that labor? So it's not like a one thing you set and let go. It's something that you continuously evaluate and see what works and what doesn't work. For me, like all my kids are at school. So I'm done with the last drop off at 8:15 in the morning. And the first round comes home at 2:30 in the afternoon. So I have that quiet time. I like if I'm driving to sports activities for them, when I'm in the car by myself till I pick one of them up from an activity and bring them home, I'm really intentional about like either making a phone call to somebody I care about. I keep the radio off and just maybe get silent for myself and just reconnect like, hey, what's working, what's not, how am I doing? I'm very reflective, I guess would
Mhm,
be a way to summarize that a little bit.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and it looks different at different times. Like sometimes it's so busy, and for me to get like quiet time or self-care time or fitness time in, I'm the mom at the soccer game that's doing laps around the soccer field, or I have a 12-inch step and I'm doing little step ups on the side of the field while my son's playing a game. So I'm getting my exercise in and he's doing his game because there wasn't another time to fit it in. If I have Zoom calls and I don't have to be on camera, sometimes I'll do them while I'm doing a little walk outside. It just allows me to get out of the environment, keep my body moving, and um, do things that can overlap.
Yeah. What's it been like? Are you finished with the book, like manuscript in, and like, are you essentially finished?
So I get the book back this week on layout. So it's all been written. Now it's getting put into layout form. We will have galley copies in 3 weeks. So we've had test readers read it already and give us feedback and everything, which has all been wonderful. So that's
Mhm.
super exciting. Actually seeing the book in like a book format gets you excited at a whole different level versus reading it on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. So that's been really encouraging. So it's almost done, but I will tell you that, I thought, okay, then the book's gonna be done and I'm gonna be done. No, you're not done. Like that's the start. It's kind of like you made the lemonade. Now you got to go set up the stand and sell it. So
Right.
the book, I made the book. Now the game starts of getting it into people's hands and having it be the calling card for opportunities and speaking events and different things like
Yeah.
that.
Who's the book written for? Like, it's probably not everybody. Like, as you were writing, who were you writing the book for?
I was writing the book for my younger self. I was writing the book to me who quit on myself. Like I quit and put my life on hold for the roles that I was playing. And I am so grateful that I had the wake up call and start living my life again, because I look at what my last 5 years of life have been, and they've been nothing shy of magic. Like the things that have come out of these mountaineering pursuits, the impact on charities and cultures and different pieces that I didn't even know going into it. Like it just has set me on fire from a standpoint of you cannot quit on you. Like you cannot quit on you, because when you do you, then the whole world benefits. And I truly want people who are like just waiting and saying like, okay, I'll get back to me, or this will be my turn eventually, or whatever. Like stop right now and figure out how to do you right now, because we need you to do you, because you're the only person that can show up like you. And I know that sounds like so overplayed right now, but I'm living proof it makes a huge, huge, huge impact.
Yeah, I think it sort of coincides with like our work life. It's like we're going to do all these fun things, when we retire. And I've had little bouts where, it's been apparent to me. It's like, you know what? Maybe maybe my dream is to hike the Appalachian Trail. Maybe that's my dream. But you know what? I can't do that. I can't take 6 months off. But you know what? I can take a day and I can experience that. And I do think we have this like someday maybe thing
Mhm.
that's all a part of our beings, and being intentional about. I mean, I love the message. What was writing the book like? I think that's your first book, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so what was that like? Like, what, is this, was it harder than you thought it was going to be? Was it easier? Like, what was
Oh,
that whole
it's
process like?
so hard. Like I think I literally named it quit proof. So I wouldn't quit writing it, because otherwise I probably would have. Like I think the title is so appropriate for this book, because I wanted to quit on it 99 times and I only said yes one more time than that, like 100. So the book title is perfect for that point. What's interesting is we live lives, and these stories show up in our lives, and we want to share those stories, because through story we connect with one another, and a light bulb might go off in you by what you read from me. And then when you try to write them on paper, it's like, okay, well, how do you structure these or formulate these so that it's giving the same message, so it's not all over the place? And what is that core message? And are we losing the story in that? Or is, like, I'm talking about, like, I climbed K2 and I failed the first time, and then I had to go back a second time. And when I went back a second time, like magic happened, because I helped sponsor the first Pakistani female to stand on top of K2.
Hmm.
So now there's women across this whole world that, like my little girls, get to see somebody that looks like them in a culture that can somewhat sometimes be oppressed. And so I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not failed the first time. I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not stepped into this pursuit. Like there's so many things that came out of this by doing these different pieces. But when you're telling that story, you don't want to get into too many details so people get bored. You don't want to leave out too many details so then people don't have the construct of how it all came together. And it's like just there's a magic, there's an art to it, and how you finesse all these things so that you're getting the message and you're telling the story.
Yeah. And so it's going to be out in January, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's
And
out in January. You can pre-order now. And
okay.
people who pre-order now, they're going to get different bonuses of some stuff that we didn't put in the final book. There are some stories on some expeditions that are fun. Also some different resilience exercises that I use on a daily basis to just keep myself in check. So there's some fun things that people order before it actually hits book stands.
And I'll be sure and put that in the show notes. So I got one more question. I'd love to hear your riff on this. So I listened to a podcast interview you did with someone else, and
Okay.
I can't remember which interview it was, but You talked about the concept of, you said, and see if this even resonates with you, if you remember, but you said, you know, if I can wiggle my fingers and my toes, I'm going to be okay. And I thought there was a lot behind that. Do you mind telling that story and how
Yeah,
that little phrase helps you stay grounded, or what it means to you?
definitely. So that happened in the car wreck. So I like was hanging in the car, waiting for another car to hit me. Luckily it didn't. And a guy came and pulled down the windshield and he's yelling at me, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I like sound was just starting to return. So I realized I'm like, okay, this human's looking at me. Now I'm finally registering what he's saying. Am I okay? I'm looking at him and his facial expression means I'm not okay. So I'm too afraid to look at my body. So I closed my eyes and then I tried to wiggle my fingers and toes. And then I remember saying out loud, "I can feel my fingers and toes. I can feel my fingers and toes. I'm okay." And I was like tearing up because I could feel my fingers and toes. And it just reminded me that in the mountains or anytime that I'm in this spot that's overwhelming, I can shut out the world. I can shut out the sounds. I can shut out the stories. I can shut out everything and close my eyes and wiggle my fingers and toes and then reground into this moment and reset. And so I use that a lot if I'm feeling overwhelmed or if I'm getting angry with one of my kids or whatever. I'm like, oh, this is my brain running a story down a track that's not going to help me. How do I stop? I stop by coming back into my body, feeling my fingers and toes, and then saying, how do I want to respond instead of react?
Yeah, that's such a great metaphor and a great story, and I that really captured my attention. So
Oh, of
thanks for
course.
sharing that. So as we wind down, Jen, tell folks where to find you. I'll put I'll put the link for pre-ordering your book. I'll put it in the show notes. But where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah. So please check out my website. So it's jenndrummond.com. There you'll have links to the book. There you'll have links to all my different social channels. So if you have a favorite there, we can connect on those channels. You can learn about some of the challenges and all the things. I love, love, love connecting with humans and hearing what you're up to. So please reach out and connect. It makes my heart warm.
Well, very good. Well, lots of great stuff, lots of great takeaways. Thank you so much again, Jen, for coming on. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, I'm grateful. Thank you.